The night my best friend of 15 years humiliated me in my own new house, in front of the only people I thought I had. I didn't say a single word. I just stood there holding a beer, smiling like an idiot. That silence? That was the beginning of everything. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 36, and for most of my adult life, I thought loyalty meant enduring things quietly. I thought if you kept showing up for people, if you made yourself useful enough, they'd eventually love you carefully. I was wrong. Jake Mercer had been my best friend for 15 years. Loud, where I was reserved. Funny, where I was measured. The kind of guy people forgave too easily because he knew how to make a room feel alive for 10 minutes at a time. We met in community college. Back then, we were both broke, both angry at people with easier lives, both pretending we had more time than we did. Jake called me brother early, and I was lonely enough to believe that meant something permanent. Over the years, I became the reliable one. When Jake got laid off, I loaned him $5,000. When he got kicked out of his apartment, he stayed on my couch. When he needed work leads, tools, or someone to bail him out of whatever mess he'd wandered into, I was there. Not just for him, for the group. Tyler Brooks was the easy laugh in the room, the guy who always seemed to wait and see which side was safer before he picked one. Sarah Klein had a way of acting innocent in any situation, mostly by drifting toward whoever had the strongest social gravity. And Mia Bennett. Mia was different, quieter, sharper. She noticed things other people worked hard not to notice. That mattered later. At the time, I still didn't understand the shape of what I was living inside. Because when people use you slowly, they don't make it feel like theft. They make it feel like closeness. By the time I bought my first real house, I had spent over a decade building my contracting business, one ugly job at a time. Remodels, fire damage repair, old homes with expensive problems and stubborn owners. I worked weekends, skipped vacations, and took the jobs other guys passed on. Eventually, it paid off. The house wasn't flashy, just beautiful in a way that felt earned. Warm wood floors, big kitchen, clean lines, wide windows. The kind of place that made me feel, for the first time in years, like my life had solid walls around it. I was proud of it, quietly. So I invited the people I loved over for a small housewarming dinner. Jake, Mia, Tyler, Sarah. I grilled steaks, bought decent bourbon, opened the back doors to let the evening air in. I wanted one good memory in that house. Just one night that made it feel like home. For the first hour, it almost did. Tyler brought a bottle he couldn't afford and joked about Ethan Cole's palace. Sarah wandered around complimenting the furniture. Mia hugged me at the door, looked around and said, "You did good." Simple. No performance. Jake came in loud. He stepped into the kitchen, whistled, and slapped the counter. "Well, damn," he said. "Guess being a greedy contractor finally paid off." He laughed. Tyler laughed too, a little. Sarah smiled. I smiled with them. First cut of the night, small enough to ignore, so I did. Dinner moved outside. Weather was warm. Music was low. For a little while, everything felt normal. Then Jake brought up the loan. He did it casually, like reaching for the salt. "Hey," he said, "you still keeping tabs on that old $5,000? The table went subtly still. I looked at him. "You mean the money I loaned you?" Jake leaned back and smiled. "See? That right there." Tyler looked down at his plate. Sarah took a sip of wine. Mia stopped moving. I kept my voice even. "It was a loan, Jake. Bro, it was years ago. And you said you'd pay me back." Jake laughed, but there was something hard under it now. "God, Ethan. Everything with you comes with a receipt." Small silence. The kind that tells you the room has changed. I should have let it go. Instead, I said, "It's not weird to remember what someone promised." Jake looked around the table, like he was checking whether the room was still his. Then he smiled. "This is what I mean," he said. "You help people, sure, but you never really let it go. You just store it." "That's not fair," I said. "Fair?" He laughed once. "Come on, you love being the useful guy." That one landed because there was truth in it. A little. I had built too much of myself around being needed. But what Jake was doing wasn't truth. It was reduction, turning one flaw into my whole identity. I said, "No one asked you to come here and do this." That should have ended it. Instead, it gave him a stage. "Oh, do what?" he said. "Say what everyone's thinking?" That word hit me harder than anything else. Everyone. Jake stood up with his beer and looked around the yard, the house, the table. Then he said, "You know what you are, Ethan? A mobile ATM with power tools." Tyler muttered, "Dude." Sarah looked down. Mia's jaw tightened. Jake stepped closer and slapped my shoulder like we were still joking. "Without us," he said, "you'd be nothing. Just a lonely contractor with a big empty house." The whole table went still. I looked at him, then Tyler, then Sarah, then Mia. Nobody moved fast enough. That mattered, because hesitation tells the truth too. I set my beer down carefully, and I said, "Hope you all get home safe." Then I walked inside, through my own kitchen, up the stairs, and into the bedroom at the end of the hall. I left my own party in my own house because staying there 1 second longer would have meant helping him humiliate me. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark and listened. Low voices downstairs, a chair scraping, a door opening, then Jake laughing, still laughing. That was the sound that broke something. Not the insult, the entitlement inside it. The certainty that he could do that to me in my house and still feel safe. A while later, I heard a soft knock. Mia. When I opened the door, she was standing there with her purse held close to her side, looking like she knew sorry wasn't going to cover it. "I'm sorry," she said. I nodded once. "Yeah." She glanced down the hallway. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. She stayed near the door at first, like she wasn't sure she deserved to sit down. That was the first honest thing anyone had brought into my room all night. "I should have told you sooner," she said. "Told me what?" She swallowed. "Jake's been talking about you for a while." I didn't answer. Maybe because I already knew. Maybe because hearing it out loud made it real in a way I couldn't soften anymore. Mia pulled out her phone. "There's a group chat," she said. "A separate one. Without you." Something inside me went cold. She handed me the phone. At the top were 4 names. Jake, Tyler, Sarah, Mia. Not me. I scrolled. Jake. Ethan's gotten weird since the house. Jake. Honestly, keep him useful, not close. Jake. Mobile ATM with power tools. A little lower. Tyler. I still need his truck Saturday. Jake. Exactly. Jake. Don't ice him out till after that. Then, Jake. If anyone needs renovation hookups, ask now. Jake. Before he starts acting like he's too good for everybody. I kept scrolling. It got uglier. Not because the jokes were especially clever, because they were consistent. A pattern, a system, a language of extraction. Who could get a referral through me? Who still needed access to my contractor discount? Who should ask me for favors when I was most likely to say yes? How to keep me useful without getting stuck with me too much? I looked up at Mia. "How long?" She held my gaze. "Months," she said. "Probably longer." My chest didn't explode. It just emptied. Because the people I had called family, the people I thought were my people, had been talking about me like infrastructure. Not a friend. A resource. Mia took the phone back slowly. "There's more," she said. Of course there was. She told me about Halpern's, the bar on 5th where the group used to go after birthdays and random Fridays and football Sundays. "A few weeks ago," she said, "Jake got drunk there. He was talking to Ben, the bartender, and some guy at the end of the bar." She paused. Then she said, "He told them he'd been using you for 15 years. Said all he had to do was act like life was hard and you'd open your wallet." I stared at the floor. "He called you predictable," she said quietly. "Said you were too lonely to notice people only stayed close because you made things easier." That one hit so hard I laughed. Just once. Dry. Empty. Mia looked sick saying it. Good. Not because I wanted her to hurt. Because for once, someone else was carrying a piece of the ugliness instead of leaving all of it with me. I sat down on the edge of the bed. "They didn't love me," I said. Mia didn't interrupt, so I finished the thought myself. "They organized around me." She looked down. Then she said the thing that finally made her feel human instead of noble. "I knew some of it," she said. "Not all of it, but enough." She rubbed her thumb over the side of her phone. "And I didn't say anything because I didn't want Jake turning on me too. And because after what you did for me last year, I felt worse the longer I waited." I looked up. "What do you mean?" She exhaled. "When my bathroom pipes burst," she said, "you came over that same night. You brought your crew on a Sunday. You fixed everything. You dealt with the insurance mess. And when I asked what I owed you, you said, 'Nothing. Just get your house back.'" I remembered. Barely. To me, it had been one more rescue in a long line of them. But Mia's voice was unsteady now. "I told myself I stayed quiet because I hated conflict," she said. "But that wasn't all of it. I think part of me was ashamed because I benefited from you too. Not the way Jake did. But I let you be the person who always carried more. And I told myself that was just who you were. That mattered, because it was true. Not neat truth, not flattering truth. Real truth." She looked at me and said, "You were the only one in that group who ever helped people without making it about yourself. And I let them talk about you like that anyway." In all the ugliness of that night, that was the first clean thing. Not because Mia was perfect, because she wasn't. Because she was guilty, and she said so. After she left, I locked the bedroom door and sat in the dark. I didn't cry. I didn't punch a wall. I didn't text Jake paragraphs about brotherhood and betrayal. I just sat there and let the truth finish arriving. I had trusted him like family, and he had turned me into inventory. At 12:43 a.m., I called Steve Patterson. Steve was an attorney I'd used once before during a contract fight with a nightmare client. Dry voice, sharp mind, the kind of man who sounded mildly disappointed by humanity as a default setting. "Patterson?" "Sorry," I said. "I know it's late." A pause. "Ethan?" "Yeah." He heard it in my voice. "What happened?" I looked around the room, my new house, my half-unpacked piece, my humiliation still cooling downstairs in dirty glasses and empty plates. Then I said, "I need to cut some people out cleanly, and I need to do it right." The next 2 days weren't dramatic. They were disciplined. I pulled every transfer I'd ever sent Jake, every text where he promised to pay me back, every message where he asked for my truck, my tools, my discounts, my referrals. I made a list of everything he still had access to. House key, gate code, garage, shared folders, vendor contacts, old junk in the side storage bin. Every favor that had hardened into assumed access. By the next morning, Steve had reviewed enough to ask one question. Does he still have a key? Yeah. Change the locks today. So I did. Front door, back door, garage, gate code, security settings. That I removed him from every account, folder, and business contact list he had no business touching anymore. I wasn't lashing out. I was finally naming what belonged to me. After that, Steve drafted the letter. Repayment demand, revocation of access, warning against defamatory contact, documentation of unauthorized use tied to business resources. Clean, precise, cold. That mattered, because rage would have given Jake a story. Paperwork just gave him consequences. I blocked him everywhere except email. That was Steve's idea. Leave one lane open, he said. People like this usually tell on themselves. He was right. Jake emailed that night. Come on, man. You're really doing lawyer shit over one bad joke? I didn't answer. Then came another. Mia blew this up. You know how people talk. Then another. If you do this, you're proving everything I said about you. Then a voicemail. Then 2 missed calls from a number I didn't know. Then an email at 1:12 a.m. calling me dramatic, bitter, fake generous, and pathetic. That was more realistic. Not one clean legal step, not instant surrender, just resistance in the ugliest shape it knew how to take. Insult, minimize, blame, rewrite. Same machine. No access to my silence this time. Tyler texted 3 days later. Hey, I should have said something that night. I looked at the message for a while. Then I replied, you should have. That was all. Sarah sent a voice note full of shaky guilt and weak excuses. She said she didn't realize how bad it had gotten, which told me she was still trying to believe her biggest sin was passivity instead of participation. Mia showed them the screenshots. That changed things, because once Tyler saw the keep him useful messages, he couldn't hide behind vagueness anymore. Once Sarah saw the jokes about my truck, my money, my referrals, my house, she couldn't pretend it had all been one ugly dinner. The shape of the betrayal became visible. Jake had led it, but the others had benefited from the version of me he taught them to see. Ben, the bartender at Halpern's, even gave Steve a short written statement confirming Jake had bragged about using me for years and called me too damn easy. That phrase should have humiliated me. Instead, it clarified something. Easy wasn't what I had been. I had been generous without boundaries. That's different. Jake didn't sign anything quickly. Of course he didn't. First, he denied the debt. Then he said half of it had been gifts. Then he claimed I was retaliating because I couldn't handle being told the truth. Then he went quiet for 8 days and made Steve chase him. Only when it became clear there was enough documentation and enough people backing away from him that the story was no longer his to control did he finally agree to a repayment plan. Not for everything, not gracefully, but enough. Enough to turn mockery into consequence. Enough to make him feel, in a language he respected, that access was over. He sent one last email after signing. I hope this house was worth losing your friends over. I read it twice, then I deleted it. Because by then, I understood something I hadn't understood on the night he humiliated me in my backyard. I didn't lose my friends. I lost the illusion of them, and that is not the same thing. The first Saturday after it all settled, I stayed home all day. No calls, no group plans, no trying to rush the meaning of any of it. I went to the hardware store, bought new planters for the patio, replaced the porch light, repainted the guest room Jake used to treat like a backup apartment, cleared out the junk he'd left in the side storage bin. Small things, but honest things. By late afternoon, I was standing in my kitchen with a cup of coffee, looking around at the same house I had been so proud to open to everyone just weeks earlier. Same walls, same counters, same wood floors, same evening light. But it felt different now. Lighter. Not because the betrayal hurt less, because the confusion was gone. No fake brotherhood in the corners. No extra key in the wrong pocket. No imagined closeness built on what I provided. Just space. Earned space. A few days later, Mia came by with Thai takeout, and we sat on the back patio while the sun went down. We didn't spend the night performing healing. We talked about work, her sister's baby, a dog 2 houses over that barked at bicycles like it had personal enemies. At one point, she looked around and smiled. It actually feels like you live here now. I asked her what that meant. She thought about it for a second. Before, she said, it felt like you built a nice place for people to have access to you. Now it feels like home. That line stayed with me, because it was true. Looking back, that humiliating night wasn't just Jake's betrayal. It was the moment I finally saw the truth. That being useful is not the same thing as being loved. That loyalty without boundaries becomes self-abandonment. That some people don't love you. They love your availability. This was my quiet revenge. Not on Jake. On the old version of me who kept confusing endurance with love. The version who thought being needed made him safe. The version who kept opening the door wider every time someone disrespected him and called that maturity. I didn't fight back. I just stepped away. And for the first time in years, my house finally felt like home.